Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into the ultimate bottom-up masterclass on plant structure and soil science. We're going way beyond basic gardening advice here to explore the true biology of cultivation. Whether you've got seasons of experience under your belt or you're just a massive fan of botanical science, we're going to see exactly how a plant is structurally engineered for absolute maximum yield. Let's get right into it.
Here's our structural roadmap for today. We're starting way below ground with the dirt and moving all the way up to advanced canopy architecture. We'll hit anatomy and crop goals, roots, soil and media, the art of plant training, advanced canopy management, timing and stress management, and finally, support systems for yields.
Okay, let's dive right into this with our first stop, anatomy and crop goals. Before we even think about cutting or bending any branches, we have to ask a pretty fundamental question. Why do we actually care about plant training in the first place? Well, to answer that, we've got to get microscopic. Think about those large mushroom-shaped structures, the capitate-stalked glandular trichomes. These tiny epidermal outgrowths on the female floral tissues are the absolute primary sites where terpene-rich resin is synthesized and stored. Maximizing the sheer number and the health of these specific tissues, that's our ultimate biological goal. Literally every single structural change we make to the plant is designed to provide these tiny, microscopic factories with more light and way better airflow. So here's the deal. You have to define your crop goal first. Why? Because different goals require entirely different plant densities and training regimens. If you're chasing premium flower quality, you absolutely need an open canopy, moderate spacing, and high support to maximize those trichomes we just talked about. But say your goal is fiber production. In that case, you want tall, uniform stands packed tightly together with minimal structural work. You just can't use a one-size-fits-all method. It is incredibly crucial to plan your architecture before a single plant ever goes into the ground.
Moving right along to our second section, roots, soil, and media. You know, before we can shape that gorgeous canopy above, we've got to build a rock-solid foundational environment down below. And to truly understand soil science, we need to talk about cation exchange capacity, or CEC. Let's strip away the scientific jargon for a second. CEC is basically a measurement of your dirt's magnetic storage power. It's the ability of your growing medium, like your soil or cocoa, to hold on to positively charged nutrient ions, think calcium and magnesium, and actually exchange them with the plant's roots. The chemical makeup of your dirt heavily dictates this capacity, which basically decides how efficiently your plant can feed. Building a custom container mix is honestly a brilliant balancing act. You're basically juggling three main variables: water holding, aeration, and organic matter. Peat and coconut bases are fantastic for providing that foundational water retention and air. Then you toss in organic bulk, like worm castings, to massively boost the biology and that CEC storage power we just broke down. Finally, you might introduce woody structures like pine bark for long-term drainage. It's a very precise, very intentional structural recipe. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the unique chemistry of cocoa coir. Raw, unwashed cocoa has negatively charged sites that just naturally hold on to potassium and sodium. If you plant directly into poorly prepared cocoa, it's going to aggressively tie up the calcium and magnesium you're trying to feed your plant. That causes massive stress. And that right there is exactly why we use washed and buffered cocoa. It's pre-treated with calcium to stabilize the root zone, ensuring your plant actually gets the food you're giving it. All right, shifting our focus above ground. Section 3, the art of plant training. Now that our roots are happy and the passive soil setup is done, we're moving into active biological manipulation. And the foundational concept you need to grasp here is apical dominance. In nature, the main central growth tip of the plant acts kind of like a dictator. It produces hormones called auxins that travel downward and literally suppress the outward growth of the lower side branches. It keeps them small. But for cultivators chasing massive yields, this biological rule is exactly what we are actively trying to break. We want a wide, flat canopy, not just one tall Christmas tree. So how do we break that rule? We generally use two totally distinct philosophies. First, there's low-stress training, or LST. Think of this as the gentle bend, don't break approach. You're bending and tying branches horizontally, which tricks the plant into thinking the main tip is gone, all without actually cutting it. Low recovery time, very gentle. On the flip side, we have topping, a high-stress training method. This is aggressive, but it's high reward. You are completely removing that main growth tip. This drastic move permanently shifts those hormones to the side branches, forcing them to explode into new main stems. But it requires a healthy plant and definitely a longer recovery time. Let's walk step by step through a proper topping cut. First things first, only do this if the plant is in healthy vegetative growth with about 4 to 6 nodes. Never ever top a sick plant. Second, grab your sharp pruning shears and sanitize them with alcohol. Treat this like surgery, guys. Third, make a clean cut just above a node, intentionally leaving a small stub. That stub protects the underlying side buds. And finally, just step back. Give it 2 to 3 weeks for those hormones to fully shift and for the new leaders to stretch out. Patience is absolutely key here. Now, if you go the bending route instead, you have to pay really close attention to your branch angles. You're aiming for a gradual 45 to 60 degree bend to open up that canopy safely. If you pull too hard or bend it too flat, you create these nasty sharp kinks. And those kinks are a big problem because they literally physically crush the internal vascular tissue. That cuts off nutrient flow and leaves you with weak branches that snap easily. A nice gradual curve protects the stem while completely maximizing light distribution to the center.
So, now that we know the basic cuts and bends, let's step it up. Section 4, Advanced Canopy Management. We're looking at master-level canopy structures now, and this brilliantly illustrates what happens when you combine topping with bending, the radial tie-down, which a lot of people call the wagon wheel. The idea is to evenly space your lateral branches completely outward, exactly like the spokes on a wagon wheel. This intentionally leaves the very center of the plant totally empty. Why? Because that open center allows warm, humid air to rise up and escape right out the top like a chimney. It is an absolute game changer for drastically reducing mold risk as those flowers develop. Of course, knowing how to use these techniques means nothing if you don't know when to use them. The outdoor canopy decision tree is an incredible diagnostic tool for matching your training intensity to the actual health of your plant. And the very first question at the absolute top of that decision tree is simple. Is the plant healthy and actively growing? If the answer is no, you hit a hard stop, you avoid all training, and you focus entirely on recovery. You never, ever add the stress of training to a plant that's already sick. Which brings us right into Section 5, Timing and Stress Management.
Like we just said, knowing how to cut is pretty much useless if you don't know when to cut. Every single action costs the plant energy, so we have to carefully manage our stress budget. Let's walk through the timeline. In the first 2 to 6 weeks, the plant is in its vegetative phase, building roots and leaves. It can handle moderate to high stress, like aggressive topping. But watch what happens around week 8. As it enters the flowering phase, its energy radically shifts from building structure to producing flowers and resin. If you inflict high stress then, the plant will just stunt. So our physical interventions have to aggressively decrease as the plant matures.
This stress budget concept is especially true when it comes to defoliation. Look, there's a wild myth out there that you should just strip all the leaves to give the buds more light. But we have to remember, leaves are the plant's solar panels. They capture light to fuel the whole shebang. Our golden rule here is selective removal. We only reach in to take out the dead, damaged, or densely crowded interior leaves that are actively blocking vital airflow. If a healthy fan leaf isn't hurting the canopy, leave it alone. Let it do its job and provide energy. And that leads us to our final act, Section 6, Support Systems for Yields. Let's move to our next point and see how this builds into protecting the massive architectural investment we've just spent months creating. The single biggest mistake growers make is waiting until the branches are heavy to install their support. You need to install your stakes, cages, and trellis systems early, well before the heavy buds arrive. Setting up your trellis during the vegetative stage means the stems will literally grow through and lock into the netting. That provides immense structural integrity, preventing your main branches from snapping during severe weather later on. Now, when you're actually securing those branches to your supports, the material you choose is literally life or death for the plant. I really want to warn you about a tragic mistake called girdling. If you use hard zip ties or thin, sharp wires, the branch is actually going to grow right around that wire as it naturally thickens up over the season. It essentially strangles the vascular tissue and kills the branch entirely. You absolutely must use soft, wide, plant-safe ties, and make sure you're checking them weekly so they aren't choking your canopy. To sum up everything we've explored today, I absolutely love this core rule. Train with purpose, build structure, protect your investment, train for the final purpose of the plant, not just the appearance of the canopy. It perfectly captures the entire thesis of this explainer, from the cation exchange capacity of your dirt down in the roots to the exact angle you bend a lateral branch up top. Every single choice has to systematically serve your final goal. So, I'll leave you with this provocative thought to ponder before your next cycle.
Are you simply cutting your plants to change how they look today, or are you actively architecting a scientifically sound structural blueprint for the final harvest? Thanks so much for hanging out with us for this deep dive. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next explainer.